The air in the lower docks of Aurelian Prime tasted of recycled oxygen, ozone, and the metallic tang of welding flux. It was a taste Arlen Drake knew better than clean air. He was a man who preferred mechanisms he could hold to ideas he could not. Down here, circuits had logic. Upsphere, in the crystalline spires where the Empress lived, they had etiquette. Arlen wiped scent grease from his knuckles, his gaze tracing the glowing seam of a resonance array on a freighter's battered hull. He was a mechanic, and a good one. He specialized in the old tech, the pre-choir systems that relied on physical harmony, rather than the homogenized neural interfacing that was all the rage. He had been a warden cadre once, part of an emergency rescue unit on the frontier. That was a different life, one he had buried 10 years ago under the ashes of the Cygnus 7 colony. He had seen what happened when complex systems failed. Now, he just fixed them. He kept his head down, his tools clean, and his intuition quiet. His intuition, the resonance as he called it, was a strange thing, a warden gift. He could feel the hum of a machine, sense its stress, its misalignment, its sickness. It was how he knew the Imperial summons was real before he even opened the data slate. The slate had been delivered by 2 Imperial guards, their mirror-finish armor utterly ridiculous in the grime of the lower docks. They stood stiffly while he read the order, their presence drawing nervous stares from the Zell traders and the human dockhands. He was being hired to patch an artifact. Specifically, the Empress's personal travel throne. Arlen had snorted. "You're joking. You have techs up there who design stars. I fix cargo haulers." "All Imperial technicians have failed," the lead guard stated, his voice a synthesized baritone. "The artifact is pre-consensus. It requires physical diagnostics. Your name was on an ancient registry of artisans." "Artisan," Arlen muttered, packing his diagnostic kit. "That's a new one. I've been called a grease monkey, a sparkhead, and several things I cannot repeat." He went because they offered him a sum of credits that had 7 zeros, and because his intuition was screaming at him. It was a low, insistent hum he had not felt since Cygnus 7, a hum of something very old and very wrong. Hours later, he stood in a chamber that was the antithesis of the docks. The air was pure, scented with a faint, cold mist, and the light was silver, emanating from the walls themselves. It was silent, a heavy, velvet-draped silence that pressed on the eardrums. Empress Seraphine Kale was there. She was younger than he expected, seated on a simple administrative dais, not the throne he was meant to fix. Her posture was impossibly straight, her dark hair bound in a complex, severe style. She regarded him with an expression of profound, glacial indifference. She was, he recognized, a woman who had never been kept waiting in her life. And next to her, Arlen's gaze flickered. There was a small, kneeling figure beside the dais. It was draped in the same midnight blue silks as the Empress, its head bowed, unmoving. A cloud of shimmering hair, paler than the Empress's, obscured its features. It was tiny, perhaps the size of a large, graceful canine or a very young child. Arlen filed the observation away. "Ceremonial pet," he concluded. Most high-orbit cultures had them, living symbols. He turned his attention to the real problem, the travel throne. It was not a chair. It was a catastrophe of ancient engineering. It sat in the center of the room, a swirling sculpture of bone-white polymers and dull, non-reflective metal. It hummed, but it was a sick, discordant sound. It does not respond to neural interface. Seraphine's voice cut the silence. It was cool and precise. The machine spirits are silent. Arlen knelt beside the base, running his bare fingers over a cooling conduit. "It doesn't have spirits, Your Majesty. It has harmonics, and these are out of tune." He worked for an hour, deaf to the oppressive silence of the court, blind to the Empress watching him. He was in his element. He opened panels the cortex had deemed ritual and found burnt-out relays. He traced power lines that were not lines at all, but resonant forks designed to carry energy via vibration. He felt the resonance shift. The throne's sick hum quieted, and a new, cleaner tone emerged. It was deep, like a cello, and it was curious. He felt the machine notice him. A pulse, a digital query, shot up his arm. It was not a choir interface, not a violation. It was a question. "Who are you?" Arlen's intuition answered without his permission. The warden cadre part of him, the part that harmonized with distress beacons, resonated back. "I am a fixer." A deep click resonated from the throne's core. The hum settled, smooth and powerful. The lights on the armrests glowed a steady, warm amber. Arlen stood up, rubbing his hands on his trousers. A smear of ancient conductive paste left on the fabric. He had done it. He felt a rare, small flicker of pride. He turned to the Empress. "It's stable. The harmonics are aligned. It just needed a firmer hand, the old way." Seraphine watched him, her dark eyes unreadable. She gave a single, sharp nod. Arlen, relieved and, suddenly, very aware that he was just a mechanic covered in grime, felt his social awkwardness surface. His gaze darted to the small, silent figure still kneeling by her dais. The ceremonial pet. It had not moved in over an hour. In the docks, you thanked the man who handed you the wrench, and you gave the yard dog a scratch. It was simple, in a moment of profound, catastrophic misjudgment. Arlen stepped toward the dais. He smiled. A small, tired smile. "And you," he said softly. "You've been very patient." He reached out and gave the small figure's head a gentle, familiar pat. The silence that followed was not velvet. It was vacuum. It was the sound of 150 kilograms of Imperial Guard rage. The air hissed as two plasma glaives were leveled at Arlen's throat. The silver light of the room reflected in the energized blades. The guards who had been standing like statues by the walls were now a wall of armor around him. Arlen froze, his hands still hovering in the air. The pet looked up. It was not a pet. It was a young woman. Her face was identical to Seraphine's, but where the Empress was severe and cold, this woman's features were soft, unformed, and now wide with absolute, terrified confusion. "Do not," Seraphine Kale said. "Move." Her voice had not risen. It had, in fact, dropped to a whisper. But it was a whisper that cracked like a whip in the frozen air. She rose from her dais. She did not stride. She glided. Arlen slowly lowered his hand. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice straining for calm. "I believe there has been a misunderstanding." "You," Seraphine said, stopping 3 feet from him, "have touched the Imperial Twin Echo." What? "A sacred vessel. A biological duplicate of the bloodline, maintained for ritual and spiritual significance. An offense." Her voice was impossibly cold. "Punishable by slow atomization." Arlen's pragmatic mind raced. He had broken the ultimate taboo. He had, in courtly terms, just petted the Empress's soul. "She looked," Arlen offered weakly, "like a pet." One of the guards actually choked. Seraphine's eyes narrowed. "You are either the bravest fool in this sector, or an assassin of unparalleled subtlety." "I'm a mechanic," Arlen insisted. his heart hammering a rhythm against his ribs. "I fixed your throne. I thought she... I thought she was a dog. A very well-dressed dog." The Empress stared at him for a full 10 seconds. Arlen saw her weigh the absurdity of his claim against the sheer impossibility of the offense. He was an unknown variable, and she did not like unknown variables. "You have desecrated a holy ritual," she said. "The law demands your life. My curiosity demands otherwise." "I vote for curiosity," Arlen said, then winced at his own insolence. "You will," Seraphine declared, ignoring him. "Perform the ritual of contrition in full. Until I am satisfied, Captain. See to it." "Your Majesty," Arlen began. "I am not familiar with—" "You will be." The ritual of contrition, Arlen discovered, was not a simple, "I'm sorry." It was a 4-hour ordeal of procedural humiliation, designed by a bureaucracy that had weaponized boredom. He was forced to kneel on a cold marble sigil in an antechamber. He was stripped of his tools, but left in his grease-stained work clothes, a deliberate sartorial insult. And Seraphine was there. She did not leave him to his punishment. She sat on a viewing throne, the twin echo now hidden away. And she watched. "Recite the litany of first contact." A protocol droid droned at him. "I do not know the litany of first contact." "The subject fails," the droid announced. "Then he will learn," Seraphine's voice echoed in the chamber. For the first hour, they forced him to listen to, and repeat, the excruciatingly dull histories of her bloodline. His knees ached, his back stiffened. He was a warden cadre. He had endured worse. He had waited 3 days in a collapsed mine with 2 broken ribs. He could wait out a bored Empress. He began to analyze her. She was not just punishing him. She was studying. "Why?" she asked, cutting the droid off mid-sentence about the Second Kale dynasty. "Did you join the warden cadre?" Arlen blinked. The shift in topic was jarring. "It was a job." "It is a job for idealists. They rescue people from dying colonies and sing songs of unity. You do not seem the type." "I wasn't. I was there for the engineering. The equipment is, or was, top of the line." "And Cygnus 7, she asked, her voice casual. Arlen's blood ran cold. He had never told the guards his service record. "What about it?" "It was a catastrophic failure. A resonance cascade in the main reactor. 10,000 dead. The warden cadre unit stationed there was wiped out. Except one." "It was a fire," Arlen said, his voice flat. The memory of the heat, the smell of burnt plastic and people, rose in his throat. "Reactors do not just cascade." "The choir said it was a tragic, unavoidable accident." "The choir," Arlen said, choosing his words carefully, "is very good at explaining things." A new presence entered the room. A man. He was not human, though he wore a human-style courtier's uniform. He was tall, thin, and moved with a liquid grace. His skin was pale, like polished ivory, and his eyes were a solid, empathetic blue. The emissary of the choir. "Your Majesty." His voice was warm, like honey, like a soft blanket. It set Arlen's teeth on edge. "I came as soon as I heard of the desecration, a terrible offense. The choir feels your indignation." The air in the room seemed to grow thick, cloying. It was the soft influence, the background radiation of the choir, a psychic nudge towards compliance, peace, and shared feeling. It made most people want to agree, to find harmony. Arlen just felt vaguely nauseated. "Emissary Morel," Seraphine inclined her head. She did not look pleased. "This person, Morell said, gesturing to Arlen with a beautiful, six-fingered hand. He caused you great distress. He caused a breach in protocol, Seraphine corrected, her voice sharp. He is being educated. Indeed. Morell turned his warm, blue eyes on Arlen. You feel no remorse, do you, mechanic? You feel annoyance, impatience. You are not in harmony. I am on my knees, Arlen said. My knees are in harmony with the floor. The rest of me is just tired, Morell smiled, but it did not reach his eyes. He looked at Seraphine. Your Majesty, this is a grave security matter. He touched the echo. He has laid hands on the Imperial line. He must be scanned for the safety of the court. He is a fool, Morell, not a spy, Seraphine said. Is he? Morell's voice lost some of its warmth. He works in the lower docks, a place of descent. He has access to ancient technology, and he is resistant. I feel you. He gestured to Seraphine. I feel your guards, but him. He focused on Arlen. He is silent. He is a void. This is the mark of a trained spy. Your Majesty, I must insist he be remanded to my custody for gentle interrogation. Seraphine went very still. Arlen recognized the moment. The political leverage. Morell was accusing her of harboring a spy. He was using Arlen's mistake to gain jurisdiction. And then, Seraphine smiled. It was terrifying. You are right about one thing, emissary, she said. He is not in harmony. She turned her gaze on Arlen. It was not an interrogation. It was an excavation. The apology is over. Mechanic, you are interesting. You stood in a room saturated with the choir's peace field, and you felt nothing. You felt no awe in my presence. You felt no fear for my guards. And you felt no remorse for your offense. You just fixed the throne. That is what I was hired to do, Arlen said. When you touched the throne, she asked, her voice dropping, what did it do? Before Arlen could answer, a technician, pale and trembling, ran into the room. He bypassed Morell and knelt before Seraphine. Your Majesty, the throne, the Imperial throne. It is. Singing. The chamber was silent. Singing, Morell asked, his calm breaking. It has activated. Your Majesty, the technician gasped. The old systems. It is broadcasting a signal. A synchronization key. It is looking for him. He pointed a shaking finger at Arlen. Arlen looked at Seraphine. The pieces clicked into place. The strange resonance, the click. The system had not just been repaired. It had been woken. And it had recognized his intuition, his warden gift as its operator. Morell's face was no longer warm. It was a mask of cold fury. He is not a spy. He is an asset. He must be contained. The choir demands custody. The choir, Seraphine said, standing, demands much, and offers only subjugation wrapped in comfort. This man broke my law. He insulted my house. She pointed not at the dungeon, but at a private door guarded by her most elite soldiers. Captain Cole, take this, artisan, to the Forbidden Wing. He is under Imperial protection, pending investigation. He is not to be touched by anyone. Arlen was hauled to his feet. He looked at Morell, who was radiating pure, undisguised menace. He looked at Seraphine, who was watching him with a new, terrifying intensity. Protection, Arlen asked the captain, a woman with a hard face and a fresh scar on her chin. The captain, Anya Cole, shoved him toward the door. It looks a lot like arrest. Move. Arlen considered running. He was fast. He knew the ductwork of Aurelian better than most. He could be back in the lower docks in 2 hours, and on a freighter to the rim in 4. But as he was marched through the ancient, silent corridors of the Imperial Wing, he thought of Cygnus 7. He thought of the fire. He thought of the choir's easy explanation. The throne had woken up. It was singing for him. And that throne, he was suddenly, intuitively certain, held the truth. He looked back. Just once. The Empress was still visible in the doorway of the antechamber. She was not a queen. She was a woman holding a live grenade. "This," Arlen muttered to himself, "is not how I saw my day ending." "Quiet," Captain Cole snapped. Arlen allowed himself a small, grim smile. He was a prisoner of a galactic empress, hunted by a psychic hive mind, and the key to a piece of ancient, alien technology. But, he reflected, as they rounded a corner into a garden lit by glowing moss, at least he was not kneeling anymore. And the Empress, he noted, had not looked away. She was severe, yes, but she was also curious. The tinder was dry. The spark had been struck. The Forbidden Wing was not a dungeon. It was a suite of rooms so opulent they made the antechamber feel like a loading bay. The walls were hung with woven light, shimmering textiles that displayed calming, shifting patterns of nebulae. The air was filtered to a perfect, sterile temperature. It was, Arlen recognized, the most luxurious prison on Aurelian Prime. And Captain Anya Cole was his jailer. She stood by the single, sealed doorway, her armor plates locked, her face a mask of professional neutrality. The scar on her chin, he noted, was from a plasma cutter, not a blade. A technician's weapon. She was, perhaps, more than just a soldier. "I need my tools," Arlen said, breaking the silence of the first hour. "You are a prisoner, artisan. You need nothing." Her voice was flat, devoid of the choir's artificial warmth or the court's silver-plated barbs. It was the voice of a woman who dealt in absolutes. "I am a mechanic. A mechanic without his tools is just a man. And you have me here because I am a mechanic. You are here because the Empress willed it. My will is to keep you in this room. The two are, for now, compatible. Do not test that." Arlen sighed and sat on a bench, carved from a single piece of dark, polished wood. He respected her. She was a wall. You do not argue with a wall. You find the seams. "You were a combat engineer, weren't you?" he asked. Her hand, which had been resting on her sidearm, tightened. "That is not your concern. That scar." He pointed to his own chin. Plasma cutter. A bad relay on a trench digger. Probably. You tried to force the connection while the power was still cycling. You were in a hurry. Captain Cole's eyes narrowed to slits. "How did you know that?" "It's what I do. I read machines, and the people who break them." He stood up. "Look, Captain, I am not your enemy. I offended your Empress. I get it. I petted the Holy Ghost. But that thing I fixed the throne. It is not just a chair. It is broadcasting. And Emissary Morel wants it very, very badly. You, a combat engineer, should understand that when the enemy wants a piece of tech, you do not let them have it. You figure out why they want it." Anya Cole stared at him, her internal calculus shifting. He was right. Her suspicion of him was a simple, clean equation. Her suspicion of the choir was a complex, messy variable she dealt with every day. "The Empress will decide what is to be done," she said. But the certainty in her voice had cracked. While Arlen was being measured by his guard, Seraphine was being besieged by her court. Emissary Morel did not shout. The choir never shouted. He expressed his profound collective concern in the Hall of Petitions, a room designed to make everyone feel small beneath the gaze of holographic statues of Seraphine's ancestors. "Your Majesty, the harmony of the court is disturbed," Morel said, his voice resonating with a dozen layers of calculated empathy. He was flanked by 3 High Lords of the Aurelian court, men and women whose faces were serene, their eyes blank with the choir's placid influence. "The artisan, Arlen Drake," Morel continued, "is an anomaly, a void. Our attempts to peacefully interface with his mind, to assure ourselves of his benign intent, have failed." "He is a mechanic, Morel, not a telepath," Seraphine countered, her voice cold. She sat on the lesser dais, a public-facing seat of judgment. His mind is his own. That is still the law on Aurelian Prime, a law that breeds isolation and danger. "A portly High Lord," Baron Vesh spoke up, his voice ringing with a fervor that was not his own. "It is this sovereignty of self that led to the Cygnus 7 tragedy, 10,000 lives lost, because their systems were not unified. The choir offers us unity, a shared consciousness that prevents such accidents. This man, this mechanic is a symbol of that broken, chaotic past." Seraphine's gaze hardened. This was the choir's true weapon, not assassination, but ideology. They offered peace, an end to all conflict, and by demanding the surrender of the self. They preyed on fear, on the memory of every disaster, every war, and they had allies, like Vesh, who were tired of the burden of individual choice. Cygnus 7 was a reactor failure, Baron, not a failure of philosophy, Seraphine said. "A failure the choir could have prevented," Morel interjected gently. "Had we been permitted to harmonize the colony's central systems? But we were not. Just as we are not permitted to harmonize this. Artisan, he must be surrendered to our care. He has touched a sacred vessel. We must know what damage his chaotic mind has inflicted upon the Echo and upon the throne." It was a brilliant political trap. He was linking Arlen's sacrilege to a threat against the imperial line, and offering the choir as the only solution. "Your concern for my house is noted, emissary," Seraphine said, rising. The statues of her ancestors seemed to brighten, responding to her authority. "But the travel throne is pre-consensus. Your neural interfacing would be inadequate. You cannot scan what you do not understand." She looked past Morel, past the choir-influenced lords, to the armored form of Captain Cole, who had just entered the hall and was standing at silent attention. "My artisan," Seraphine declared, her voice ringing with finality, "will investigate the throne himself, under my direct supervision, and you will see to his needs. Captain, give him his tools. Give him access. But if he so much as breathes in a way you do not like, you have my permission to put him through a wall." The court was dismissed. Morel bowed, his placid mask firmly in place. But his solid blue eyes were cold with a fury that was anything but harmonious. Arlen had never felt so alive. He was back in the silver chamber, his own worn toolkit, open on the floor. The air crackled. The travel throne was humming, a low, resonant A minor. It was a sound of inquiry, of waiting. "It is. Pleased to see me," Arlen murmured, running his fingers over the control stud. "Do not project, artisan." Anya Cole snapped from her post by the door. "It is a machine. It feels nothing." "You are wrong, Captain," Arlen said, not looking up. "It does not feel like you or I. It resonates. It's a different language. Your neural ships, they scream their data into your skull. This, this is a conversation. Then, what is it saying? Seraphine asked. She had entered silently, dressed not in court silks, but in a severe, practical black uniform. She looked less like an empress and more like a ship's commander. "It is saying," Arlen said, "that it is locked, and that I woke it up. When I touched it, when I resonated with it, it mistook me for a keybearer. A what? An operator, an authorized user. But I am not the only user. It requires 2 signatures to unlock its primary function." He looked at her. "One is the bloodline. That is you. The other is a mind outside the harmony. That is me." "Unlock what exactly?" Seraphine asked. "I do not know yet." Arlen closed his eyes. This was the part he kept hidden. He did not just feel the machine. He heard it. He let the A minor hum fill his head, and he pushed back gently. Not with a command, but with a question. "What do you protect?" He laid his hand on the armrest. Seraphine, seeing his intent, placed her own gloved hand beside his. The throne's hum shifted. It deepened, and in Arlen's mind the sound became a shape, a pattern. It was a 3-dimensional spiral, a swirling chart of energy lines. "A map," Seraphine breathed, her eyes wide. She was not seeing what he was, but she could feel the thrum of activated power through the armrest. "A resonance map," Arlen corrected. "It is not a map of space. It is a map of frequencies. It points to a signal, a source. The machine calls it the Deep Archive." "The Archive?" Seraphine's voice was sharp with disbelief. "That is a myth, a legend from the pre-consensus, a place where all the knowledge of the first colonies was stored, before the choir began its great unification." "It is real," Arlen said, "and the throne knows how to find it." "This," he tapped the armrest, "is the key. And Morel knows," Seraphine finished, her mind moving as fast as his. "He does not want you. He wants this. The choir has spent 5 centuries absorbing civilizations. The Deep Archive is the one thing they have never found, a complete, uncorrupted record of their enemies. Of us." Anya Cole stepped forward. "Your Majesty, if this is true, the machine must be destroyed. It is too dangerous." "Destroy our only advantage," Seraphine countered. "No, Captain. We will use it. We will go to this archive." "Impossible," Anya said. "Muriel is watching. The choir has eyes everywhere. We cannot take one step off this station without him initiating a full diplomatic incident. He will claim we are unstable. He will use it as a pretext to harmonize the court by force." Seraphine was silent for a long moment. Her gaze fell on Arlen, who was wiping conductive paste from his fingers onto an already filthy rag. He was a problem, and he was a solution. "No," Seraphine said, a slow, dangerous smile forming. "We will not take one step. He will, as my prisoner." She looked at Arlen. "Your ritual of contrition was insufficient. Your offense demands hard labor." Arlen raised an eyebrow. "The crown anvil," Seraphine continued. "The ancient ceremonial workshop has fallen into disrepair. It is where the first Kale monarchs forged their regalia. It is also, coincidentally, filled with pre-consensus technology that only an artisan could restore." Arlen caught her meaning. "A workshop." "A prison," she corrected, her voice carrying for Anya's benefit. "You will be transferred immediately. You will polish scepters and realign ceremonial hardware until your hands bleed." Anya Cole looked confused. "Your Majesty, the anvil is on the lowest ring. It is Dirty. It is, Seraphine agreed. It is also shielded, ancient, and contains a private, pre-consensus transit line that is not on any modern map. A line that leads directly to the deep space Imperial docks. Anya's eyes widened. A cover, a punishment, Seraphine insisted. One that Muriel will applaud. He will be so pleased to see the fool who petted the Echo reduced to polishing metal. He will not look for us there. Us? Arlen asked. Of course, Seraphine said. I must personally oversee your labor, to ensure your contrition is adequate. The private study was small, lined with physical books, bound in leather, a profound affectation in a digital age. Seraphine was drilling him. You will walk 3 paces behind me. Your eyes will be fixed on the floor. When I stop, you stop. When I speak, you will answer. Yes, Your Majesty. Or no, Your Majesty. You will not offer opinions. You will not look at the guards. You are a penitent. You are beneath notice. Is that clear? Arlen, now dressed in the rough, undyed tunic of an imperial laborer, nodded. Yes, Your Majesty. Your tone is insolent. Yes, Your Majesty. Better? She paced the small room, the very picture of regal severity. Muriel will have agents watching our transit. They will be looking for any sign that this is not what it appears. You must be convincing. You mean I must look broken? Arlen asked. He leaned against the doorframe, crossing his arms. You must look contrite. It is a subtle distinction. He watched her for a moment. The commander, the Empress, the woman holding a live grenade. You play this part well. This is not a part, she snapped. It is my life. I have been balancing the demands of my court and the insidious friendship of the choir since I was 12 years old. I know precisely who I am. Do you? Arlen pushed off the doorframe. You are an empress who knows how to fight a political war. But I am a warden. I know how to survive a structural collapse. He gestured to the door of her study. For instance, this door, it is a Class 4 blast shield. Impressive. But the electro-lock mechanism. He walked over to it and placed his ear against the metal. What are you doing? Seraphine demanded. I am listening, he murmured. The tumblers. They use a magnetic pin system. 3 generations old. Very reliable. Also very, very loud. If you know what to listen for. He tapped the panel. I could bypass this in 30 seconds with a focused resonator. Your Captain Cole could probably do it in 60 with a plasma drill. The point is, Your Majesty, your defenses are traditional. He turned to face her. You are worried about my tone. I am worried about an assassin with a resonator. We are seeing 2 different threats. Seraphine stared at him, her dark eyes unreadable. He had, once again, breached protocol. He had criticized her. He had touched her private door. A slow, almost imperceptible tremor of a smile touched the corner of her mouth. It was gone as fast as it appeared. 30 seconds, she asked. 25, if I skip the pleasantries, Arlen said. See that you do, Seraphine replied, her voice crisp. Now, fix your posture. You slouch like a dockhand. Anur. I am a dockhand, Your Majesty. You, she said, tapping his breastbone with one finger, are my key. You will act the part I give you. The transit to the Crown Anvil required crossing the Grand Bazaar on the Central Ring. It was the only way to reach the sealed Imperial lift without using a route Morel could monitor. It was chaos. The bazaar was a cavern of noise, light, and smell. Dozens of species mingled. Hulking and the four-armed Zell traders bartered with crystalline entities who chimed when they spoke. The air was thick with the scent of alien spices, ozone, and unidentifiable fried foods. Arlen kept his head down, 3 paces behind Seraphine, as instructed. He was supposedly a bound laborer, his hands cuffed in ritual shackles that Anya Cole had assured him she could unlock in 1 second. Seraphine was veiled, a concession to her pilgrimage to the anvil. Anya and 4 other Imperial guards, dressed in the muted grays of civilian contractors, formed a tight diamond around them. Arlen felt the attack before he saw it. It was not a sound. It was a feeling, a sudden, coordinated spike of pure, synthetic panic in the crowd. The choir's gentle harmony reversed, weaponized. The crowded bazaar became a stampede in an instant. "Protect the Empress!" Anya yelled, drawing her sidearm. But they were not the target. 3 figures, moving with a speed that was not human, detached from the panicked crowd. They wore the simple robes of monks, but their eyes glowed with the blue, empathetic light of the choir. They were not assassins. They were retrievers. And they were moving impossibly fast. For Arlen, Anya's team engaged. Blaster fire, loud and chaotic, erupted. The civilians screamed. "Protocol is broken," Arlen yelled, his warden training kicking in. This was a collapse. This was Cygnus 7. He grabbed Seraphine's arm, yanking her out of the path of a stampeding Zell trader. "Let go of me, artisan," she commanded. Stumbling, "No time. Your Majesty." He broke from the guards, pulling her into a narrow, dark alleyway between a noodle stall and a power conduit station. "This way, trust me." "Anya," Seraphine yelled back to her guard. "She is busy," Arlen said, shoving a pile of refuse out of their way. One of the choir retrievers was right behind them, its movements fast and jerky. "Where are we going?" Seraphine demanded, pulling her veil from her face. "A shortcut," Arlen pointed to a rusted bulkhead. "This alley is built over a primary resonance shield for the main station reactor. It scrambles short-range telemetry. It is a dead zone." The retriever skidded around the corner. It was unarmed, but it reached for Arlen, its blue eyes wide with fanaticism. Arlen did not fight it. He turned to the wall, where a massive, sparking junction box was bolted to the stone. He ripped the unsecured cover off, exposing a thicket of cables. "Cover your eyes," he yelled at Seraphine. He grabbed 2 of the thickest primary cables, insulation smoking in his grip, and slammed them together. The resulting sound was a deafening crack. An arc of brilliant white-blue electricity lit the alley, and a powerful electromagnetic pulse blasted outward. The choir retriever screamed. It was a high, thin sound, like a dying modem. The blue light in its eyes vanished. Its neural interface, the source of its enhanced speed and loyalty, was fried. The man, just a man now, collapsed to the pavement, clutching his head. Silence, save for the distant shouting and the hum of the resetting power grid. Arlen was breathing heavily, his hands scorched. Seraphine was pressed against the far wall, her chest rising and falling, her eyes wide with not fear. It was analysis. Anya Cole and her team appeared at the mouth of the alley, weapons raised. One guard was nursing a burned arm. Anya took in the scene: the neutralized retriever, the smoking junction box, the Empress, alive. She looked at Arlen. "How?" Anya said, her voice tight with disbelief. "Did you know about this alley?" Arlen let the scorched cables fall. "I used to repair these conduits. They were always giving me headaches. Now I know why." The crown anvil was silent. It was a vast, cold cavern of a room, smelling of dust and cold metal. Forges that had not been lit in centuries stood like dark altars. Half-finished crowns and ceremonial armor lay on workbenches, covered in cloth. Anya posted her guards at the entrance, a full 500 yards away. They were alone. "Your headaches saved our lives, artisan," Seraphine said. Her voice was quiet. The adrenaline had faded, leaving a tense, strange intimacy. "My intuition," Arlen said, walking toward the central forge. It was a massive, ancient thing, connected to the station's core power. "It is reliable?" He ran his hand over the cold metal. This was it. The forge was an amplifier. The throne was a key, but they were not in tune. "I need you again," he said. He pointed to a large, rune-covered disk on the forge's side. "That is the ignition plate. It is keyed to your bloodline. Place your hand on it." She did, without question. Arlen placed his own hands on the main conduit. He closed his eyes and listened. The throne, leagues above them, was still humming its A minor. The forge, however, was a deep, resonant C-sharp, a discordant chord. He let his resonance flow into the forge, not forcing it, but guiding it. He used his own mind as the tuning fork, pulling the forge's frequency down, matching it to the throne's. The forge shuddered. The dust on its surface vibrated, and a low, pure note began to build in the room. In his mind, the resonance map from the throne snapped into sharp focus. "It is clear now," he whispered. "The deep archive. It is not in normal space. It is hidden inside a null field, a navigational hazard." The map coordinates solidified. A name, written in the light of the resonance, burned in his mind. "The petrified rim," he said. Seraphine gasped, snatching her hand back as if burned. "No, absolutely not. It is forbidden. The first Imperial expedition was lost there. Their neural ships. Their logs were madness. The crews. They tore each other apart. The choir itself calls the area the dissonance." "They went mad because they were networked," Arlen said, opening his eyes. The hum faded, but the knowledge remained. They were using choir interfaces, trying to force a connection. The dissonance shattered their shared minds. He looked at her, the realization dawning on him, cold and terrible and brilliant. But a mind that is not networked, a mind that is silent. "A mind like yours," she finished. "You could survive it." He nodded, a slow, grim confirmation. He had just found the one place in the galaxy the choir could not follow. He also realized something else. As he had tuned the forge, he had felt its inner workings, its flaws, its age, as a physical sensation. His gift was not just intuition. He could hear the music of the universe. He was a tuner, and that, he knew, was a secret he had to keep, even from her. "Morel," Seraphine said, her voice hard as the metal of the forge, "did not try to kill me." "He tried to kill you?" "He knows what you are, even if you do not." "He did not try to kill me," Arlen corrected, his voice flat as he stared at the forge. "The retrievers had stun collars. They were not there for a kill. They were there for an acquisition. Killing me would lock the throne forever. He wants the archive." "And you?" she asked, stepping close to him. "What do you want? Mechanic?" "The memory of fire. The smell of burning plastic. 10,000 dead." "I want to know who gave the order on Cygnus 7, Arlen said, his voice raw. "I want to know why my team died. And I have a terrible feeling the answer is in that archive." Seraphine was silent, studying his face. "The grease monkey. The fool. The key. Then we will go," she said. It was not an imperial decree. It was a statement of fact. This is no longer about my court. It is about the truth. A dangerous trip, Your Majesty, Arlen commented. A ghost of his old humor returning. A machinist and his apprentice. She did not smile. Do not, she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. Push your luck, artisan. You are still my prisoner, and I am still your Empress. But as they stood in the dust and the silence, surrounded by the ghosts of her ancestors, the space between them was no longer 3 paces. It was barely 1, and her eyes were not glacial. They were the color of the forge fire just beginning to ignite. The pre-consensus courier ship was named the Unburdened Heart, a poetic title for what was, in essence, a flying engine with a cockpit. It had no neural interface, no choir harmony drive, not even an autopilot. It was a solid-state machine, navigated by vector thrust and mathematics, and, as Arlen discovered, by resonance. It will not clear the docking bay, Anya Cole stated, her hands braced against the bulkhead. The ship was vibrating, the metal groaning. The magnetic clamps are not receiving the release code. It does not want a code, Arlen said from the pilot's chair. He had his eyes closed, his hands resting on the cold, pitted controls. The ship was old, and it was frightened. It had not flown in centuries. It wants permission. Arlen, Seraphine said, her voice tight. She was strapped into the co-pilot seat, her imperial bearing replaced by a rigid white-knuckled grip. The labor pretext will only last for another 15 minutes. Miral's agents will be at the anvil. Then he will be 15 minutes too late, Arlen murmured. He let his mind sink into the ship. He did not command it. He listened to it. He felt the misaligned energy in the magnetic clamps, the fear-driven vibration in the engine. He pushed back a single, calming resonance. You are safe. We are leaving. You were built to fly. So, fly. The groaning stopped. A deep, resonant thud echoed through the hull as the ancient clamps retracted. Engine is green, Arlen said, opening his eyes. He grasped the throttle. Hold on! He flew the ship like a warden cadre, hard and fast, pushing the small craft through the unmapped transit line at speeds that made Seraphine's breathing hitch. They burst from a hidden exhaust port on the dark side of Aurelian Prime, a tiny speck of metal against the vast, glittering superstructure. Their destination was a set of coordinates, a stain of gravitational irregularity known as the Petrified Rim. It took 3 days. For 3 days. Arlen flew on instincts and the hum of the engines. Anya Cole serviced the weapons, her movements economical and precise. Seraphine handled navigation, plotting their course on paper-thin data slates, her calculations swift and perfect. They formed a strange, functional triangle. The mechanic, the soldier, and the Empress. The Petrified Rim announced itself not with a bang, but with a sickening lurch. What was that? Anya said, her hand flying to her sidearm. We just crossed the line, Arlen said. He felt it in his teeth. A high-frequency vibration, like a million tuning forks all striking a different note. The dissonance. I feel ill, Seraphine said, her hand going to her temple. My thoughts are loud. That is why the first expedition failed, Arlen said, his grip tightening. This field is pure chaotic resonance. It is an anti-choir. To a networked mind, this must feel like psychic sandpaper. It would tear them apart. It does not affect you, Seraphine asked, watching him. It is loud, Arlen admitted. But it is just noise. It is not personal. He navigated the Unburdened Heart through a graveyard. The shattered hulks of ships, both ancient and modern, drifted in the pale, swirling nebula. This was where machines came to die. The coordinates, Seraphine said, her voice strained. They point to that. Sector Prime Anchor. It was a large asteroid. A jagged shard of obsidian bristling with ancient, dead communication spines. Arlen landed the ship in a pressurized bay that seemed to carve itself out of the rock. The air was thin, smelling of iron and sulfur. "We are expected," Arlen said, pointing. A single massive figure stood waiting for them at the end of the docking ramp. It was over 7 feet tall, and its body was not made of flesh, but of what looked like interlocking plates of dark, volcanic rock. Its eyes were twin points of orange light, like embers in a cooling forge. "Empress Seraphine Kale," the figure's voice rumbled, like boulders grinding together. "You are smaller than your grandfather." Seraphine stepped forward, her regal posture returning as if she had donned a suit of armor. "And you, Lord Takari, are exactly as he described. A monument to honor, Takari, a being of the lithic Takari race," inclined his massive head. "My honor is my own, but my debt is to your bloodline. My Clutch Prime would have starved 2 generations ago if your grandfather had not broken the choir's harmonious quarantine, with 3 freighters of unregistered grain. We do not forget." His glowing orange eyes swiveled, passing over Anya, and landing on Arlen. "And this is the one who petted the echo." Arlen blinked. "The news travels fast." "Honor is not the only thing that resonates in this galaxy, mechanic," Takari rumbled. "My people have allies. We heard of the Fool's Gambit at the court. We heard the whispers of the Smoothers." "The Smoothers?" Anya asked. "The choir," Takari spat. "They wish to smooth every rough edge, to make every mind the same. They are distasteful. They have no stubbornness, not like humans." His rocky features seemed to approximate a smile. "I find your species admirable. You are fragile. You break easily. And yet you insist on being. You build gods you do not obey. It is fascinating." "We are here for the deep archive," Seraphine said, cutting to the point. "The coordinates led to you." "The coordinates led through me," Takari corrected. "The archive is not a place you can land. It is a place you must endure. Follow." He led them through the asteroid, which was a hollowed-out, pre-consensus listening post. Takari's people. He explained, were miners and guardians, living on the edges of civilized space. He brought them to a viewing port. It was a sheet of diamond-hard crystal, looking out into the nebula. But this part of the nebula was different. It was a storm. A swirling, violent tempest of crystalline particles and raw energy. "The crystal storm," Takari said. "The archive is inside." "We cannot fly in there," Anya stated. "It would strip the hull from our ship in seconds." "Your ship?" "No," Takari agreed. "The storm is the first guardian. The dissonance is the second. Only those who can navigate the storm by magnetic lines, as my people do, can reach the temple. And only those who can survive the dissonance can enter it, my people. We can guide you, but we cannot enter the temple. It sings a song we cannot hear." The temple gate was a thing of impossible beauty and terror. Takari's personal craft, a heavy-plated skiff, had navigated the storm, its hull screaming as crystal shards impacted it. The gate was a perfect circle of black, resonant crystal, 50 meters high, floating in the eye of the storm. It was inert, dead. Arlen, Seraphine, and Anya stood on a small, protected ledge at its base. Takari remained on his skiff. "This is as far as honor takes me. The rest is your stubbornness." It is a lock, Arlen said, walking toward it. The noise of the storm was deafening, but beneath it, Arlen could hear the gate. It was humming a complex, waiting chord. It is asking for a signature. 2 of them. He looked at the face of the gate. In the center was a smooth, dark panel. It is an interface, a biological one. What does it want? Seraphine yelled over the storm. It wants a beginning and an end, Arlen murmured. He looked at her. It needs an imperial bloodline, untouched by the harmony. Seraphine stepped forward, her face set. She unclipped her heavy glove, her bare hand pale in the chaotic light. She pressed her palm flat against the panel. The gate responded. A pulse of soft, golden light spread from her hand, illuminating a network of circuits within the crystal. A low, beautiful tone, a perfect F-sharp, joined the storm's chaos. But it was incomplete. It is waiting, Seraphine said, her voice tight with strain. It needs the other half, Arlen said. A mind outside the chorus, a dissonant mind, a void. He stepped up beside her and placed his own calloused bare hand on the panel next to hers. The reaction was not gentle. A wave of pure, white sound erupted from the gate, a blast of resonance so powerful it threw Anya Cole back against the rock wall. The F-sharp of Seraphine's bloodline and the A minor of Arlen's mind slammed together, creating a new, brilliant, and deafening chord. The gate did not open. It dissolved. The black crystal turned to light, and a corridor of pure, stable data opened before them. My word, Anya breathed, helping herself up. Go, Arlen said. Now. They ran into the light. The corridor was not a physical place. It was a stream of information. The walls were flowing patterns, equations, and images. This is not a library, Seraphine said, her voice filled with awe. This is the past, but for Arlen. It was not abstract. The data was flowing into him. He was not just seeing it. He was experiencing it. He saw the first ships. He saw the founding of Aurelian. He saw treaties with a dozen species. And then, he saw fire. He stopped, his blood turning to ice. The walls of light shifted. He was no longer in the archive. He was on Cygnus 7. Arlen. Seraphine's voice was distant. He saw the reactor core. He saw his team, the Warden cadre. He saw Jarrus, his partner, laughing as he worked on a conduit. And then he saw them. 2 figures dressed in Warden cadre uniforms, but their faces, they were blurred. They were carrying a device, a small, complex box. Arlen watched, helpless, as they attached it to the reactor's primary resonance manifold. He saw them trigger it. He saw the cascade begin. He saw Jarrus look up, his face a mask of confusion, just as the bulkhead melted. A voice echoed in the data stream, a voice he recognized. It was younger, cleaner, but it was his. The loss of 10,000 will justify the harmonization of 10 million. It is a necessary sacrifice for unity. The report will say the dissonant human-made reactor failed. It was Morel. No, Arlen whispered. The vision faded. He was back in the corridor, but he was on his knees. The truth was a physical weight, crushing him. Arlen, what did you see? Seraphine was kneeling in front of him, her hands on his shoulders. He looked up, and the face she saw was not the mechanics. It was the Warden's, the survivor. He murdered them, Arlen said, his voice a low, shaking growl. It was not an accident. It was not a failure. It was an execution. He climbed to his feet, his rage a cold, solid thing in his chest. Cygnus, 7. My team. My friends. They were a marketing campaign. A pretext. He staged it, Anya said, her voice sick with disbelief. To sell the choir's influence. He did, Arlen said. And I am going to tear his network apart. Piece by piece. A laudable goal, a new voice said. It was smooth, empathetic, and utterly cold. 3 figures stood at the mouth of the corridor, where the gate had been. They were dressed in the white and blue robes of choir acolytes. But these were not retrievers. Their eyes did not glow. They were calm, serene. The refraction team, Anya whispered, pushing Seraphine behind her and raising her rifle. Your Majesty, we have to fall back. Where to? Captain, the lead agent asked, his voice full of gentle, pitying concern. The Archive has accepted you, but it will not let you leave. You have seen the truth. And now, you must feel the consequence. The agent did not raise a weapon. He simply raised his hand, and Arlen felt it. A wave. Not of sound, but of pure, weaponized emotion. It was despair. A crushing, suffocating blanket of absolute hopelessness. Anya cried out and staggered, her rifle wavering. Arlen saw her knuckles go white as she fought, but the psychic assault was too strong. Takari, who had landed his skiff and was charging up the ramp, roared in fury, but the sound died in his throat. The massive rock warrior slowed, his shoulders slumping, his glowing eyes dimming with a grief that was not his. It is too much, Anya gasped, sinking to one knee. We failed. The despair washed over Arlen. It hit him like a physical blow. He felt the memory of Cygnus 7, the fire, the screaming, and it flattened. It was just noise. It was the dissonance, but with a different flavor. It was an artificial, projected lie. That is it, Arlen said, his voice raw. The 3 agents looked at him, their serene masks cracking in disbelief. He was standing. He was immune. That is all you have, Arlen snarled. He was a warden. He had lived with real despair for 10 years. This was an insult. He turned to Takari. Takari blocked the door now. The Takari, his honor, fighting back the tide of false grief, let out a bellow of pure rage. He grabbed a massive shard of crystal from the wall and slammed it into the dissolving doorway, creating a physical barrier. The choir agents were trapped inside with them. Arlen, your mind, Seraphine whispered, her own face pale with the effort of fighting the emotional wave. My mind is my own, Arlen said. He turned to the glittering, flowing wall of the data stream. He did not have a weapon, but the archive was... He slammed his hands against the wall of light. You want resonance? He roared at the agents. You want to feel something. He did not just listen to the archive. He shouted into it. He poured 10 years of grief, a decade of rage, and the full, chaotic, stubborn power of his human mind into the data stream. He did not tune it. He broke it. He sang a single, discordant note of pure, human chaos. The effect was instantaneous. The smooth, flowing data of the archive shattered. The choir agents' projectors, designed to broadcast, not receive, overloaded. The wave of despair turned back on them, amplified 1,000 times. They screamed. It was not a serene sound. It was the sound of 3 minds breaking. They collapsed, their bodies convulsing, the connection to the choir violently severed. The corridor stabilized. The silence was absolute. Arlen fell to his knees, blood pouring from his nose and ears. The feedback had nearly killed him. Arlen! Seraphine was at his side in an instant. The imperial mask was gone. She was a woman, terrified and resolute. "I am fine," he choked out, spitting blood. "You are a fool," she said, her voice shaking. She ripped a strip of silk from her own tunic and pressed it to his face. "Takari, is the door secure?" "It is. Secure," the Takari rumbled. He was shaking, but his eyes were bright with fury and admiration. "They fight with cowardice. They make you weep before you die." "Anya, status," Seraphine commanded. "I am functional, Your Majesty," Anya said, climbing to her feet. She looked at the fallen agents, then at Arlen with a new, profound respect. That was unconventional. "He is bleeding," Seraphine said. She fumbled at her belt and produced a small, antique tin, carved from dark wood. "What is that?" Arlen managed, his head pounding. "My grandmother's recipe," she said. Her voice was sharp, clinical. "For nerve burn, it helps." She opened it. The ointment was dark and smelled of herbs and ozone. With a touch that was surprisingly gentle, she dabbed it on the skin above his temples, where the resonance had burned him. Her fingers were cool against his feverish skin. "Thank you," he whispered. His voice was hoarse. "You saved us." "Again," she replied. Her eyes locked on his. They were barely inches apart. He could see the gold flecks in her dark eyes. He could feel the warmth of her hand. It was a moment of profound, dangerous stillness. Then she pulled back, her movements becoming brisk, professional. "Do not do that again. It was reckless. You nearly atomized your own brain." "It worked," Arlen said, managing a weak, bloody smile. "Yes, it did." The archive, as if sensing the threat was over, began to change. The walls of data flowed again. But this time, they were not showing the past. They were offering a future. A final data packet projected into the center of the room. A complex, beautiful schematic. "What is it?" Anya asked. "It is a plan," Seraphine said, her voice filled with a new kind of awe. The archive. "It is not just a record. It is a weapon." Arlen looked at it. His mind, though aching, grasping the concept instantly. The choir is a single mind. Its strength is its weakness, a single, monolithic truth, like the Cygnus 7 file, can be denied. They can call it a lie, but a fragmented truth. The schematic showed the Cygnus data being shattered into millions of microfragments. "The Veritas Protocol," Seraphine read. "Hide the needle in the transaction stack," Arlen finished, the brilliance of it hitting him. "It is a strategy. It is accounting. It wants us to encode the data fragments into the interstellar commerce stream." "Of course," Seraphine said, a fierce smile spreading across her face. "Every time a ship buys fuel, every time a merchant pays a tariff, a tiny piece of the truth, encrypted in the data string. It will spread through the entire galactic economy in days," Anya said, catching on. "They cannot stop it. To filter the data, they would have to shut down all interstellar trade, which," Arlen said, "would shatter their own influence." "It is beautiful." "The plan requires a central injection point," Seraphine said, her smile fading. "It must be uploaded at the source. The Commerce Standard Hall on Aurelian Prime. The most secure building on the station," Anya said. "And, Your Majesty, Morel's harmonization core is located in its sublevels. He uses the trade network itself to spread his soft influence." Arlen met Seraphine's gaze. The mission was clear. 2 birds, Arlen said, pushing himself to his feet. 1 very, very precise stone. We do not just plant the truth, we destroy the core. They left the archive. As they stepped back onto the ledge, the light corridor dissolved, and the black crystal gate reformed, as if it had never been disturbed. Takari looked at the 3 of them, his orange eyes bright. The smoothers are dealt with for now, Arlen said. Good. Takari slapped Arlen on the back, a gesture that nearly sent him to his knees again. You humans, you do not just fight, you annoy. You will weaponize debt. I love it. Takari, Seraphine said. We need to get back at, and we will need allies. My people trade, Takari rumbled. We move stone and metal across the rim. We will be the first to carry your truth needles. The smoothers will not enjoy this. He offered a rare, rocky smile. It will be a great stubbornness. As their small ship, the Unburdened Heart, left the petrified rim, the mood was no longer one of escape. It was one of infiltration. Arlen sat in the pilot's chair, his head clear, the ointment on his temples cool and soothing. He was no longer a mechanic, hiding from his past. He was a warden, on his final mission. Seraphine, in the co-pilot seat, was not just an empress protecting her court. She was a revolutionary, armed with the truth. He will be expecting a direct assault, Your Majesty, Arlen said, looking at the bright, distant light of Aurelian Prime. I know, Seraphine said, which is why we will give him a trade festival. Aurelian Prime was a creature of commerce, and the festival of 10,000 sails was when it roared. The orbital city shimmered, its crystalline spires draped in holographic banners. Ships from 100 sectors, carrying silks, spices, isotopes, and ideas, choked the docking rings. The air itself thrummed with the sound of bartering in 1,000 languages. It was the perfect cover. The Unburdened Heart, scarred and silent, slipped through the chaos. Its pre-consensus drive signature registered as nothing more than gravitational noise. Arlen piloted it, not to a commercial berth, but to a derelict industrial pier on the station's underbelly, a place he used to salvage parts, a place he knew was blind. She is on the move, Anya Cole said, her eyes on a flickering, bootleg data feed. Phase 1 is live. Seraphine had made her entrance, on the Grand Concourse. A wave of stunned silence rippled through the festival crowd. Empress Seraphine Kale, who was supposed to be in disgraced penitence at the Crown Anvil, had just appeared at the head of the opening procession. She was not in silks. She wore the black, severe uniform of an imperial commander. Her face was pale, her expression unreadable. She did not look penitent. She looked absolute. Every eye, every sensor, every agent of Mirel and the choir swiveled to her. She was a gravitational object, pulling all attention into her orbit. She was, as planned, the greatest diversion in the galaxy. That is our window, Arlen said, checking his modest toolkit. The data packet from the archive was loaded onto a resonator he had built from the ship's old comm system. It looked like one of his standard diagnostic tools. Anya, Takari, let's go. Anya was in her muted gray contractor gear, her face hard. Takari, in contrast, was magnificent. He was draped in the heavy, mineral-encrusted robes of a Takari merchant lord. He carried a large, humming crate stamped with the sigil of his clutch. This is beneath my honor, Takari rumbled, adjusting his robes, pretending to trade. Ma, you are trading, Takari, Arlen said, as they merged into the throng moving toward the Commerce Standard Hall. You are trading our time, The hall was the station's heart, a towering monolith of black crystal and steel where every transaction in the sector was processed. The security was invisible and total. Choir agents, the smoothers, as Takari called them, were a placid, smiling presence at every checkpoint. They hit the first one. A customs bot, flanked by two blue-eyed choir acolytes, scanned the crowd. "Halt! Manifest, please!" The bot droned. Takari stepped forward, radiating impatience. "Manifest. My manifest is my word. Machine. I bring geo-samples from the rim pure, unchoir-touched quartz." "Sir, all mineral imports must be scanned for resonant." Takari did exactly as Arlen had asked. He slammed his massive crate onto the scanning plate. Hard. A deep, subsonic thrum shook the floor. The lights at the checkpoint flickered. The bot's optical sensors went to static for a full second. "Insolent hardware," Takari roared. "Your pathetic scanners cannot handle the purity of my cargo. You have insulted my clutch." The choir acolytes stepped forward, their hands raised in placating gestures, their faces masks of forced empathy. "Please, honored Takari, there is no need for—" "Dissonance. Dissonance," Takari bellowed, drawing the attention of everyone at the checkpoint. "This is trade. I demand satisfaction." The diversion was perfect, as Takari began a loud, honor-bound tirade about trade law and scanner maintenance. Arlen and Anya slipped past the distracted checkpoint and headed for a secure service entrance. It was guarded by two Imperial soldiers, but their eyes had the flat, placid look of Morel's influence. "Halt. This entrance is restricted," one said. Anya Cole did not bluff. She presented a data slate, which glowed with the high-clearance seal of the Imperial House. "I am Captain Anya Cole, Imperial Guard. I am escorting the prisoner, Arlen Drake." The guards tensed, their hands going to their weapons. "The prisoner. By order of Emissary Morel himself," Anya said, her voice like ice. "He is to be delivered to the lower-level Harmonization Corps for interrogation." The guards looked at Arlen, in his rough, grease-stained laborer's tunic. He looked the part, a defeated, dirty prisoner. They then looked at Anya's credentials. The seal was real. The order. It was plausible. Morel would want to interrogate the artisan. "He is dangerous," the first guard said, his voice hesitant. "That is why I am escorting him," Anya snapped. "And you are delaying me. Open the door." The guards shared a look. The logic was sound. They stepped aside and opened the blast door. The heist was on. They moved through silent, metallic corridors, bypassing the public grandeur of the hall. They were in the machine spaces. Arlen could feel the thrum of the systems around him, a deep, steady pulse of data. "She is at the Plaza of Oaths," Anya murmured, checking her feed. "Morel is with her." The trap is set. They reached the core chamber. It was a vast, cylindrical room, cold and dark. In the center, suspended in a web of glowing conduits, was the standard beacon. It was a pillar of pure black crystal, 50 feet tall, thrumming with power. Arlen could see the data of the festival, 1,000,000 transactions a second, flowing up its surface like rivers of light. It was the heart of the galactic economy. "That is loud," Arlen whispered. The beacon was singing to him. A symphony of 1,000,000 voices, all numbers and contracts. "Anya, guard the door. Do not let anyone in or out," Arlen said. He walked toward the beacon. He felt like a priest approaching an altar. This was the source. This was the machine he was born to read. He reached out and placed his bare hands on the crystal surface. The rivers of light vanished. The thrum of 1,000,000 voices went silent. The air in the room dropped 10 degrees. The beacon's polished surface, Moments ago, a screen for data, now lit from within. A new light appeared. It was not data. It was writing, ancient, swirling symbols, like constellations, burned in the depths of the crystal. They moved, reacting to his touch, forming patterns. Machine script, Arlen breathed. It was the language of the pre-consensus, a language he had never seen. But, on a level deeper than thought, he could read. I am in. At that exact moment, in the sun-drenched Plaza of Oaths, Seraphine stood before a crowd of 10,000. Morel stood beside her on the dais, his ivory face a mask of profound public concern. Your Majesty, Morel said, his voice amplified, resonating with warmth and sadness. We are collectively overjoyed at your safe return from your labors. I am touched, emissary, Seraphine said, her voice equally amplified, but sharp as a diamond. But your return, Morel continued, has raised a legal dissonance, a point of order. He produced a data slate, its contents projecting for the entire plaza to see. The Concord of 500 years, Article 4, Section 2. The imperial line shall not, during a time of ritual penance, abandon the station for any reason, lest they forfeit the trust of the charter. The crowd gasped. The High Lords on the dais shifted, their faces suddenly pale. This was not a debate. It was a coup, wrapped in law. You left the station, Your Majesty, Morel said softly. Our long-range sensors, though crude, confirmed your unauthorized departure. You abandoned us. You abandoned your post. He turned to the crowd, his arms open, his blue eyes filled with manufactured grief. You have broken the Concord, by law. You are unfit to rule. Seraphine did not look at him. She looked at Baron Vesh, one of the High Lords who had supported Myrel's call for her harmonization. Baron Vesh, Seraphine's voice, cut through the silence. A fascinating point of law. Tell me, does your fleet of private merchantmen, currently blockading the Hydra sector, in what you are calling a tariff dispute, and what the Hydrans are calling piracy, violate Article 6 of the same Concord, the one forbidding High Lords from engaging in private wars? Baron Vesh turned a shade of purple. And, Lord Admiral, Seraphine continued, her gaze shifting. Your son, his pleasure yacht, is it not currently parked in the forbidden rings of the Petrified Rim, in direct violation of the Imperial Quarantine, an order I signed? The Lord Admiral looked as if he was going to be sick. Seraphine turned back to Morel. I did not abandon my post, emissary. I was overseeing the restoration of the Crown Anvil, a sacred duty of my bloodline. The Concord protects such duties. But these gentlemen, they are breaking the law for profit and pleasure. She had not just defended herself. She had counterattacked, using his own weapon, the law, against him. The neutral lords in the assembly, who despised the choir but were terrified of breaking tradition, suddenly looked relieved. Seraphine had given them a way out. She was the one upholding the law. Morel was the one siding with criminals. Morel saw the debate, and his power slipping away. His smile remained, but it was now just a shape. A brilliant interpretation, Your Majesty. You are, as always, a master of semantics. But the law is cold. The heart of the people is what matters. He raised his hand. Let us ask them. Let us feel the harmony of their will. In the core chamber, Arlen found it, a root command line, written in the swirling, ancient script, a place to write. He pulled the resonator from his kit. He did not jack it in. He held it to the crystal. "This is going to be loud," he whispered. He activated it. He did not just upload the file. He played it. He sang the Archives Veritas protocol, the fragmented truth of Signin 7, into the beacon, translating it into the machine script's resonant language. The beacon thrummed. The script lines flashed, accepting the data. The fragmented truth, a million microscopic needles of fact, was seeded into the root of the commerce stream. It was done. In the plaza. Morell's signal was given. From the crowd. A new sound. A low, beautiful, rising chord. It was Morell's harmony unit. A team of powerful choir agents hidden among the public, projecting a wave of pure, weaponized emotion. It was not fear. It was not despair. It was ecstasy. A blinding, artificial wave of devotion, love, and worship. It washed over the crowd, a psychic drug. He is our salvation. A woman in the front row wept, her face blank with bliss. He will harmonize us, a merchant shouted. Save us from the chaos, they chanted, a chorus of 10,000 voices, all turning their ecstatic, empty eyes on Seraphine. She is the chaos, one voice said. She must surrender to the harmony. Another replied. They began to move, slowly, as one. The entire crowd advanced on the dais. They were not going to kill her. They were going to take her. They were going to voluntarily hand their Empress to Morell, a willing sacrifice for the greater good. Your Majesty, her guards yelled, forming a circle, their weapons useless against the tide of her own people. In the core chamber, a red light flashed on Anya's data slate. A security feed. The plaza. Gods above, Anya whispered. They are taking her. Arlen spun from the beacon. He saw the feed. He saw the blank and blissful faces. He saw Seraphine, a small, black-clad island in a sea of her own adoring, mindless subjects. He turned back to the beacon. He could hear the wave. It was a single, beautiful, monolithic F-sharp, a monotone of false peace. It is just one note, Arlen said, his mind racing. It is all one note. They are all singing the same song. Arlen, we have to go, Anya yelled, drawing her weapon. No, Arlen said. I can break it. He was a tuner, and that note was hideously, perfectly wrong. Anya, he said, what is the frequency for the station-wide public address system, the emergency channel? What I do not. Wait, she typed frantically. 144.7 megahertz. Why? Arlen placed his hands back on the beacon. He found the root controls for the plaza's audio system. He linked them to the emergency channel. Because, Arlen said, you cannot fight a song with a sword. You fight it with a better song. He closed his eyes. He did not sing of peace. He did not sing of war. He broadcast a code chant. He took the harsh, rhythmic beat of the unburdened heart's failing engine. He took the percussive thud of the crown anvil's cold forge. He took the sound of his own stubborn, human heartbeat. Thud-thud, click, thud-thud, click-click, thud. It was the sound of a machine breaking and resetting. It was the sound of chaos. It was the sound of dissonance. He blasted it through every speaker in the plaza of oaths. The effect was instantaneous. The harsh, mechanical, stubborn beat slammed into the choir's smooth, ecstatic F-sharp. The two frequencies warred. The beautiful chord shattered. The plaza was filled with a horrific screeching noise as the two signals tore each other apart. The crowd stopped. Their hands went to their heads. The bliss on their faces vanished, replaced by a sudden, sickening wave of confusion. The psychic drug was gone. They blinked, looking around. as if waking from a dream. They saw their Empress, surrounded. They saw Mirel, his face no longer a mask of empathy, but a pale, twisted visage of pure, unadulterated fury. What? What just happened? The woman in the front row whispered, her voice her own. Alarms. Station-wide alarms began to scream. He just declared open war, Arlen said, pulling his hands from the beacon. His nose was bleeding again. Arlen, we have to move now, Anya yelled, grabbing his arm. They will lock this place down in seconds. They ran, Anya leading, not up, but down. She blew a security panel with her sidearm and kicked open a rusted floor grate. This way. Access tunnels. They slid down a maintenance ladder into the guts of the station. The air was hot, thick with the smell of oil and ozone. They were in the machine space beneath the hall, a cavern of giant, moving pistons and humming conduits, the true heart of Aurelian. They scrambled behind a massive, rhythmic flywheel, its movement echoing the code chant Arlen had just broadcast. They collapsed against the warm metal, chests heaving, adrenaline singing in their veins. The alarms were a dull roar above them. In the cramped, vibrating darkness, Arlen's hand, slick with sweat, brushed against Seraphine's. She did not pull away. He felt her fingers find his. She grabbed his hand, her grip as strong and sure as a soldier's. They were hidden. They were hunted. And they were breathless. But in the dark, their hands locked together, a silent, defiant confirmation. The heist was over. The war had just begun. The heat from the flywheel was a solid, living thing. It pressed against Arlen's back, the massive, rhythmic thud of the machinery vibrating in his bones, echoing the chaotic rhythm he had just unleashed on the plaza above. The station's main alarms were a distant, metallic scream. In the hot, oily darkness, Seraphine's hand was locked in his. It was not the delicate, theoretical hand of an empress. It was strong, calloused from stylus and sword hilt, and slick with the same terrified sweat as his. Anya Cole was already a meter away, her pistol up, scanning the gloom. They will have this tunnel sealed in 2 minutes. Max, we have to move. Now. Seraphine released his hand. A sudden absence of warmth. The mission snapped back into place. Where, Arlen? She demanded, her voice a harsh whisper. We are trapped. Not trapped, Arlen said, his warden instincts taking over. This was not a palace. This was a structure. This was a collapse zone. We are relocating. The main service conduits run parallel to the old aqueducts. We are not going back up to the plaza. We are going under it. You need the dais. The dais, Anya questioned, confused. Your Majesty, we need to get you to the Imperial shuttle. We need to leave. No, Seraphine said, her mind already moving with his. He is right. The Dais of Oaths is not just a stage. It is the primary Imperial broadcast node, the only one Mirel cannot override without a full declaration of war. If I am going to show them the truth, it has to be from there. You are giving me orders. Artisan, she shot at Arlen, a spark of her old fire returning as she followed him into a narrower, darker passage. I am giving us a chance, Your Majesty, Arlen retorted, not looking back. Move. Above them, in the Plaza of Oaths, chaos had given way to a new, cold order. Mirel, his face a mask of pale fury, stood on a secondary platform. His peace had been shattered, his coup revealed. He had lost the argument. He would now win the battle. Activate the Sigil Conclave, Mirel commanded into his comm. Tell Baron Vesh his blockade is now high treason, unless he diverts his ships to my command. Tell the Lord Admiral his son's life is forfeit unless his guard sections seal this plaza. We will perform the transfer of stewardship. Now." He was done with persuasion. He was initiating a hard lockdown, the fake ceremony of transfer, backed by military force. "And," Morrell added, his voice dropping to a vicious whisper, "find the mechanic. Find the Empress. I want them silenced." The tunnels were a maze. Arlen moved with a purpose that Anya, a surface soldier, could only follow. He was not just running, he was listening. The station was a symphony of machinery, and he could hear the discordant notes of Morrell's control. "This way," Arlen said, turning left at a junction marked only by a humming power relay. "They are sealing the main concourse." "How do you know?" Anya panted, her rifle ready. "I can hear the maglocks engaging. They are out of phase." They rounded a corner and met their first obstacle, two of the Lord Admiral's private guards, their weapons raised. "Halt by order of the—" Anya did not let him finish. Two precise, muffled shots from her sidearm. The guards crumpled. She did not waste a breath. "Move." But Arlen stopped, gesturing for them to wait. He ran to the control panel the guards had been protecting. It was a primary power junction. "This," he said, his fingers flying, prying the cover off. "This is a Quire-Tech overlay. It is controlling the plaza's kinetic barriers." "Can you disable it?" Seraphine asked. "I can do better," Arlen said. He yanked two thick, shielded cables and slammed them against each other in a specific, arrhythmic pattern. Thud-thud. Click. Thud. "I am giving them a stutter." The panel sparked violently. Above them, they heard a heavy, grinding groan as the kinetic barriers that were meant to seal the plaza tried, and failed, to engage. "You are," Anya said, a note of profound respect in her voice, "an absolute menace." "I try." On her private comm, Anya was coordinating her own coup. "All Imperial Guard loyal to the Kill Line, Channel 7. This is Captain Cole, code Anvil Fall. I repeat, Anvil Fall. The emissary is hostile. The conclave is compromised. Rally at the dais of oaths. Hold it at any cost." A voice, rough and familiar, crackled back. "This is Docking Bay 4. We hear you. Captain, the grease monkeys are with you. We have sealed the main cargo lifts. The smoothers cannot get reinforcements from the lower decks." Anya permitted herself a grim smile. Morrell had his compromised lords. She had the engineers. They emerged from a grated opening into a service corridor beneath the plaza. The air was filled with shouting, the shriek of energy weapons, and a new, terrible humming sound. "We have to go now," Seraphine said. She unholstered her own pistol, a sleek, silver weapon. Anya kicked open the final door. They burst onto the plaza. It was war. Morrell's forces, a mix of brainwashed station security and the Conclave's private armies, were pushing the confused crowd back, trying to form a hard perimeter around the dais of oaths. Anya's loyal Imperial Guard had formed a shield wall, a small island of defiance. "For the Empress," Anya roared, and her voice cut through the chaos. Her loyalists saw them. A cheer went up. "There the dais?" Seraphine pointed. She did not wait. She ran, sprinting across the open marble, a black-clad figure of pure defiance. "Anya! Cover her!" Arlen yelled. "I was told," a voice like an avalanche boomed from their right, "that there was a fight, Takari, his merchant robes torn, his rocky hide scarred by blaster fire, charged into the fray. He had no weapon but his fists. He grabbed two choir acolytes by their heads and slammed them together with the sound of cracking porcelain. A poor fight, but it will do." He joined Anya's guard, a 7-foot lithic demon, turning the tide of the skirmish. Seraphine reached the dais. She was untouched. She leapt up the steps and slammed her palm onto the central console. The massive view screen above the plaza, which had been showing Morel's placating harmony symbols, flickered. People of Aurelian, Seraphine's voice, amplified and shaking with fury, boomed across the station. "You have been lied to." Morel, watching from his command post, saw his control shatter. He saw her at the console. "No, you will not harmonize them. Deploy the banners of stewardship. Now." From the high spires surrounding the plaza, massive, beautiful, ceremonial banners, dyed in the imperial midnight blue, unfurled. They were magnificent, and they were a lie. Arlen saw them. It is a trap. The banners were not cloth. They were flexible, mobile assimilation arrays. As they unfurled, they released a silent, invisible pulse. The crowd, which had been turning toward Seraphine, froze. The panic, the anger, the confusion, it all vanished. A heavy, suffocating blanket of calm fell over the plaza. 10,000 people stopped shouting, stopped running. They turned, their faces slack, their eyes glassy, and looked at the dais. They were not adoring. As they had been, they were empty. He had locked them down. Arlen felt it in his skull, a psychic pressure, a heavy, dominant note demanding quiet. He is locking their emotions. He is forcing peace. "He has locked me out!" Seraphine yelled from the console, her fingers flying uselessly. "The system is frozen." Morel's voice, now amplified, was a cold, surgical instrument. "The people are in shock. They require stability. The Empress is compromised. The chaos is too great. She must be contained. She will be taken into protective harmony, and I will assume stewardship of the station, as per the Concord." The crowd, in perfect, silent unison, began to walk. A sea of bodies, moving slowly, relentlessly, toward the dais to contain their Empress. "We cannot shoot them," Anya yelled, her shield wall now facing a tide of civilians. Arlen looked around, his mind racing. He was on the dais. It was ancient. The console was modern, but the stage. The stage was old. He looked down. Through a grate, he saw it. Hanging in the substructure, part of the dais's very architecture, was a massive, dark bronze bell, 10 feet across. It was covered in the same machine script he had seen on the beacon, the resonance bell of the first monarchs. "Takari!" Arlen roared, his voice cutting through the unnatural silence. "The tower that broadcast relay, the one feeding the banner, smash it." The Takari, who had been standing in confusion, his honor warring with the psychic calm, focused on Arlen's voice. A command, a purpose. "Smash, yes. I am good at smashing." He bellowed and charged the main communications relay at the edge of the plaza. "Seraphine, be ready," Arlen yelled. He dropped to his knees, shoving the grate aside, and slid into the cramped space beneath the stage. He landed on a narrow catwalk, inches from the cold, silent metal of the bell. He placed his hands on it. Morel's peace field was a single, flat, dominant E-flat. It was a note designed to numb, to erase. Arlen closed his eyes. He listened. He did not fight the note. He did not overpower it. He phase-shifted it. He found its exact inverse, its harmonic cancellation. He sang his dissonance into the ancient bell. The bell did not ring with audible sound. It shone, a wave of invisible, counter-resonant energy, pure human stubbornness, washed over the plaza. At that exact, perfect instant, Takari reached the relay tower. He tore a girder from its base and with a roar of pure lithic joy, smashed it into the crystal core of the broadcast unit. The tower exploded. The peace field, and Arlen's counterfield, warring for dominance, had nowhere to go. The relay's destruction caused a catastrophic feedback loop. The peace field shattered. Thousands of crystal shards from the relay flew into the air, catching the artificial sun. They hung for a moment, a constellation of light, before falling over the crowd like a rain of newborn stars. A collective, shuddering gasp rose from the plaza. 10,000 people woke up for the second time, shaking their heads, their minds their own. "It is unlocked!" Seraphine screamed from the console. She slammed her fist on the activation stud. The massive view screen above the plaza, high over the falling stars of debris, flickered to life. It was not a symbol. It was not Morel's face. It was a document, a single, damning file, stamped with the choir's inner sigil, the real Cygnus 7 report, the one detailing the necessary sacrifice of 10,000 lives to promote galactic harmony, the one signed 10 years ago by Emissary Morel. The plaza was silent for a full 5 seconds. Then, a single voice, a woman in the crowd, whispered a single word: "Monsters." A new sound began, not a chant and not a scream. A low, rising growl of collective, unified rage. Arlen pulled himself out from under the dais. He was shaking violently. The backlash from the bell, from countersigning an entire plaza's worth of psychic energy, was a fire in his veins. Blood streamed from his nose. His vision was a gray, static blur. He staggered, his legs buckling. A single choir agent, one who had been hiding in the shadow of the dais, saw him. The agent's face was a mask of fanatic fury. He raised a plasma pistol, aiming not at the Empress, but at the mechanic. Arlen saw the motion. He was too slow. Arlen. Seraphine's voice. He felt a body slam into him, shoving him back, away from the console. He fell, hard, to the marble. A sizzle of plasma, white-hot and blinding, passed over the exact spot where he had been standing. Seraphine was on top of him, her body shielding his, her breath hot on his face. A single, clean shot from Anya's rifle. The choir agent dropped. Silence. The roar of the crowd. The thud of their own hearts. Arlen was on his back, the marble cold beneath him. Seraphine was lying on him, her full weight pressing him down. He could feel her heart hammering against his chest, a frantic, vital rhythm. He could smell the ozone from the plasma shot, the faint herbal scent of the nerve ointment, and the salt of her sweat. Her dark hair had fallen loose, framing a face that was not an Empress's. It was the face of a terrified, furious woman. Her dark eyes, inches from his, were wide. Not with fear for herself, but with a fierce, protective rage for him. "You are, terrible. Prisoner," she panted, her voice rough. He managed a weak, bloody smile. "You are not a bad shield." The moment stretched, suspended in the chaos. It was an oath, sworn in blood and terror, unspoken and unbreakable. "I will live for you. I will die for you." Anya Cole, pistol still smoking, cleared her throat. It was a very loud, very pointed sound. "Your Majesty, Emissary Morel is relocating." Seraphine did not move for another second. Then she pushed herself off him, the mask of the Empress slamming back into place. She offered him a hand, a practical, non-regal gesture, and hauled him to his feet. He was dizzy, but he was alive. "He is fleeing," Anya reported, her data slate tracking the emissary's transponder. "He is heading for the Imperial sector, for the acoustic greenhouse." His inner sanctum, Seraphine said, straightening her uniform. The core of his manipulation network. He is beaten, Anya said. The plaza is ours. The people are calling your name. No, Arlen said, wiping the blood from his face. His voice was hoarse. He is not beaten. He is cornered. He is going to do something desperate. He is going to burn the station. Seraphine finished, her eyes dark. If he cannot have Aurelian, he will harmonize it into silence. He will cascade the core. She turned, her face a mask of cold fury. Anya, hold this plaza. Hold my city, Takari. The massive Takari, covered in dust, bounded onto the dais. A good fight are there. One more. Seraphine said. With me. Arlen, can you walk? Arlen looked at Morel's transponder, a red dot moving toward the last bastion of his power. He thought of Jairus. He thought of Cygnus 7. I can run, Arlen said. The three of them, the Empress, the artisan, and the alien left the cheering plaza, running from the public victory toward the final, private war. The acoustic greenhouse was not a garden. It was a sterile, crystalline dome, pristine and white, set in the heart of the imperial sector. The air around it hummed with a low, sickening frequency that set Arlen's teeth on edge. The main doors were high-tensile alloy, sealed tight. A moment, Takari rumbled. He did not bother with a lock. He put his rocky shoulder to the door, braced his feet, and pushed. The metal screamed, groaned, and then tore from its hinges. Inside, it was silent, utterly, unnaturally silent. A single, raised platform sat in the center of the vast, white room, supporting a complex console that glowed with a soft, blue light. Morel was there. He was not running. He was waiting. You are too late, Your Majesty, Morel said, his voice calm, his simple robes immaculate. The unfortunate failure of the people to accept harmony only proves that they are not ready for choice. It is over! Morel! Seraphine yelled, advancing her pistol level. No, Morel said. He touched his console. It is just beginning. I will simply make the choice for them. A full, station-wide cascade, a new harmony, a final, perfect peace. Stop him, Arlen yelled. I am not the one you must stop, Morel said, a thin, cold smile on his face. He gestured to the shadows behind the console. A second figure stepped into the light. It was the twin Echo. The small, silent, kneeling figure Arlen had petted what felt like a lifetime ago. She was dressed in the same midnight blue silks, her pale hair shimmering. Arlen, Seraphine. And Takari froze. Iris, Seraphine whispered, her pistol wavering. The twin Echo looked at them. She looked past Seraphine. She looked past Takari. Her gaze landed on Arlen. And she smiled. It was not the confused, terrified look from the throne room. It was not the blank, empty expression of a ritual vessel. It was a slow, knowing, and utterly different smile. Hello, artisan, the twin Echo said, her voice as clear and strong as a bell. You took your time. The white, sterile silence of the acoustic greenhouse was heavier than any sound. It was the absolute zero of noise, a vacuum designed to amplify Morel's psychic control. Seraphine's pistol was rock steady, aimed at the emissary's heart. Takari flanked her, his massive presence a thundercloud of contained violence. And in the center of it all, the twin Echo. The girl Arlen had mistaken for a pet was smiling. Hello, artisan, she repeated, her voice clear and resonant. You took your time. Seraphine's aim wavered for the first time. The blood drained from her face. Iris, what are you doing? Morel, who had been the picture of calm fury, now smiled. It was a genuine smile, triumphant and cruel. She is the core, Your Majesty. The final harmony. You thought the echo was a mere ritual. She is the anchor. A psychic void, a blank slate of your own bloodline, designed to absorb and amplify the choir's song. She is my masterpiece, and she will now sing this station into its final, perfect piece. He turned to Iris. Begin the cascade, my dear. Show them the beauty of true unity. Arlen watched Iris. He was a tuner. He heard the music of machines, and he had heard the dissonance of humanity. Morel heard only his own monolithic song. And Iris. Arlen could hear her. She was not a void. She was a symphony, held quiet for a lifetime. When he had touched her, all those hours ago, he had not just broken protocol. He had struck the first note. Iris looked at Morel. Her smile vanished, replaced by an expression of cold, profound pity. My name, she said, her voice ringing in the silent room, is Iris, and I am not your masterpiece. Morel's triumph froze, cracking like thin ice. What did you say? He petted me, Iris said, her gaze shifting to Arlen. It was soft, grateful. You all saw it as an insult, a desecration, but he was the first person in my entire existence who looked at me and saw a person. He touched me without ritual. He did not try to harmonize me. He just saw me. She turned back to Morel. You used me as an anchor, but when he touched me, he broke the chain. Insolent. Copy, Morel hissed, his composure shattering. He lunged for his console. You will all burn in the same harmony. You will all be silent. He slammed his hand on the activation stud. A deep, seismic thrum shook the very foundations of the station. A cascade. A total, station-wide overload. He has done it, Seraphine screamed, but Arlen was already moving. He did not run for Morel. He ran for the wall. The entire greenhouse was a machine. The crystalline walls were latticed with conduits, glowing with the soft, blue light of the choir's energy. This was the brain. He is trying to lock me out, Seraphine yelled, her hands flying over a secondary console near the wall. It is a cascade protocol. I cannot override his handshake. Then we do not override it, Arlen said, his voice a low growl. We overwhelm it. The doors that Takari had shattered finally burst inwards, not from an attack, but from allies. Anya Cole, at the head of 10 of her most loyal Imperial guards, stormed the room. Hold this position. Lock down the emissary. But Myrel had his own guards. From alcoves in the white walls, 4 silent, blue-robed Praetorians of the choir emerged, their weapons humming. The firefight was instantaneous, contained, and brutal. Plasma sizzled, turning the white room into a strobe-lit hell. Anya Takari, hold them, Seraphine commanded, her pistol spitting silver fire as she covered her team. Arlen, what are you doing? Arlen had both hands pressed flat against the main conduit wall. He closed his eyes. He was not in the room. He was in the station. He felt the thrum of the great flywheels beneath the commerce hall. He heard the vibration of the docking clamps, the hiss of the life support systems, the deep, resonant song of the main core. Morel was singing a song of death into it, a single, flat note of overload. Arlen pushed back. He became the ghost in the machine of Aurelian Prime. He countered Morel's flat note with a chaotic, stubborn, life-affirming rhythm of 10,000 working parts. He poured his own dissonance, his warden's resilience, into the station itself. Morrell screamed. He was thrown back from his console, clutching his head. You cannot. The resonance is mine. He is fighting me for control, Arlen shouted, sweat pouring down his face, his nose bleeding from the strain. The core. It is resisting us both. Seraphine, it needs the Imperial command. He is locking me out with an older code. Seraphine understood it was a failsafe, a two-key system. The choir versus the dissonance. The station's ancient, pre-consensus heart needed its master to choose. She ran to her console, shoving a fallen Praetorian aside. Morrell, seeing her, tried to rise, his face a mask of hate. "It is mine. It is my station, emissary," Seraphine said, her voice steel. She slammed her hand on the console, the screen recognizing her palm print. "Command override Kale Anvil 0. I recognize the artisan, Arlen Drake, as prime conductor. All systems. Execute." Sure, the station roared, Arlen's consciousness, amplified by the station's main core and given absolute authority by Seraphine, became an undeniable wave. It slammed into Morrell's fragile, monolithic control and shattered it. The acoustic greenhouse, the anchor of the choir's power, could not contain the feedback. The crystalline walls screamed. A network of spiderweb cracks spread from the main conduit. The glowing blue tubes that snaked through the walls, the emotion conduits burst. One by one, pop, pop, a spray of raw, psychic energy, luminous and chaotic, filled the room. The air tasted like ozone and lightning. The choir's insidious, gentle hum, the background radiation of Aurelian for a generation, was gone. Morrell was thrown across the room like a doll. His connection to the choir, to the station, to everything violently severed. He landed in a heap, his robes smoking, his body convulsing. The cascade alarms went silent. The station's core hum settled back into its deep, steady rhythm. The firefight stopped. Anya's team, bruised but standing, covered the surviving, dazed Praetorians. Takari had one pinned beneath his foot. The final battle was over. In the silence, broken only by the crackling of the dying crystal, Arlen sagged against the wall, his legs giving out. He was shaking, utterly spent. Morrell lay on the floor. He was just a man, pale, thin, and shaking with the aftershock of disconnection. Arlen pushed himself off the wall. He walked, his steps heavy, toward the fallen emissary. Takari raised his massive, rocky fist. "Let me finish the smoother. For Cygnus 7. For honor." "No," Arlen's voice was hollow. He looked down at the man who had murdered his friends, the man who had built a philosophy on their ashes. He felt the rage, the grief, the 10 years of burning hatred. And it was cold. Morrell looked up at him, his blue eyes no longer empathetic, just empty. "Kill me," he whispered. "A martyr for harmony. Do it." "Kill you," Arlen said. "That is not the punishment. You used my friends, my team, as a marketing campaign. You turned 10,000 deaths into a statistic for your greater good." Arlen unclipped the data slate from his belt, the one from the archive, the one with the truth. He knelt beside Morrell. "You do not get to die a martyr. You do not get to die in silence." He activated the slate, linking it to the greenhouse's now open comm system. "You," Arlen said, his voice breaking, but cold as ice, "get to listen." He did not play the report. He played the audio logs, the archive footage. The sounds of Cygnus 7 filled the pristine, shattered room. The sound of Jarrus, his partner, laughing as he worked on a conduit. And then I told her, it is not a leak. It is a resonance imbalance. The sound of the device activating. The click. The first confused alarms. What is that core integrity just... What? Jarrus! Jarrus! Get out of there! Get... The sound of melting metal. The screaming. Morell's eyes widened in terror. He tried to cover his ears. Takari, his face a mask of stone, grabbed his wrists and held them fast. "This is your harmony," Arlen said, his voice shaking with the force of his contained grief. "This is your greater good. You will sit here, and you will witness the truth of what you did. You will hear their names." Morell's mind, stripped of its psychic defenses, could not handle the raw, unfiltered human truth. He broke. He began to sob, a high, thin, terrified sound. It was not the sound of remorse. It was the sound of a monster forced to look in the mirror for the first time. This was Arlen's justice, the warden's revenge, not murder, witness. They dragged Morell out of the collapsing greenhouse just as the main structural supports began to fail. The plaza, when they emerged, was silent. The crowd, 10,000 strong, had been held back by Anya's perimeter. They saw the Empress, scarred and stained with blaster fire. They saw the giant Takari. They saw the artisan, Arlen Drake, his face a mask of bloody exhaustion. And they saw emissary Morell, broken, sobbing, dragged between two guards. The silence broke. The low growl of rage Arlen had heard earlier returned, magnified. "Kill him," a merchant shouted. "Tear him apart." The crowd surged forward. "Hold." Seraphine's voice, amplified by the dais. Cut through the anger, she stood tall, her uniform torn, her authority absolute. The crowd, instinctively, obeyed. "You have seen the truth," she declared, her voice ringing off the spires. "You have your city back, but he will not be murdered in the street. That is his way. That is the way of the choir, which hides its violence behind harmony. We are Aurelian. We are law." She pointed to the trembling Morell. "He will face an independent tribunal, formed of every species on this station. He will be tried in the light. He will answer for Cygnus 7. He will answer for all of it. His harmony will be judged by the dissonance he so feared. That," she said, her voice softening, "is our justice." The crowd did not cheer. It was a more profound sound, a deep, collective assent. The anger did not vanish, but it was contained. It was channeled. It was the beginning of a true, stubborn, human peace. Hours later, the station was quiet. The festival of 10,000 sails was over, but the trade, after a brief pause, had resumed. The truth needles Arlen had planted were already flowing out into the galaxy. The Imperial wing was still Arlen, Seraphine, Anya. And Takari stood on a private observation deck, a curved window, looking out at the glittering expanse of Aurelion Prime. They were clean, patched up, and weary to the bone. Takari, his arms crossed, inclined his massive stone head. "It was a sufficient fight. The smoothers have lost this anchor, but they will return." He turned to Seraphine. "The choir's philosophy is an insult to the stone. It abhors strength. My clutch prime, in light of your stubbornness, swears the oath of stone. We will guard the petrified rim. Aurelian has an ally." He then looked at Arlen, and his rocky features almost smiled. "And an annoying brother, artisan, Empress, do not break my new city." With a final, rumbling nod, the Takari left. Seraphine turned to Anya. Captain, the conclave. Broken, Your Majesty, Anya said. Her voice crisp. Baron Vesh and the Lord Admiral are in custody, begging for amnesty. Their private armies have surrendered. They will face the tribunal with Morel, Seraphine said. And your people, the engineers, the dockhands who held the lifts. Anya's face lit with a fierce pride. They are inspired. They are asking for tools. They want to tear out every piece of choir tech on this station. They want to build. Good, Seraphine said. Give them whatever they need. Authorize the Freedom Forge network. I want every system on this station hardened. I want our resonance to be stronger than theirs. That is your new mission, Captain. Anya Cole's posture straightened. She was no longer just a guard. She was an architect. Yes, Your Majesty. She glanced at Arlen, a look of profound, silent respect. Artisan, she nodded and was gone. Now, they were alone. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant hum of the city. Arlen stood by the window, staring at his own hands. They were shaking, a fine, uncontrollable tremor. What is wrong, Arlen? Seraphine asked, her voice soft. You won. You had your justice. Cygnus 7 is answered. He did not look at her. I did what he did, he whispered, the words tasting like ash. In the plaza, with the bell. I forced my will on them. I sang my dissonance into their heads. And in the greenhouse of Shiras, I used the station's core. I became the ghost in the machine. I overrode their minds. He finally turned to her, his eyes, which had faced down Mayrel, now filled with a deep, cold terror. What is the difference between my resonance and his harmony? We both took their choice. I am afraid. I am just another version of him. She looked at him, at this man who could hear the universe, who had torn down an empire, and who was now terrified of his own shadow. She did not speak. She stepped into his space, close enough to feel the tremors. She took his shaking hands in hers. Her grip was firm, grounding. The difference, Arlen, she said, her voice quiet but absolute, is intent. The choir forces unity because it fears dissent. It silences choice. You shattered their false unity to give them back their dissent. You did not take their choice. You returned it. She tightened her grip. Morel's power was a cage. Yours was a key. You are defined by what you choose to build, Arlen, not what you have the power to break. He looked down at their joined hands. The mechanic and the Empress. He breathed in. He breathed out. The shaking, finally, began to stop. A mechanic, he murmured. And an Empress. It is highly irregular. Good, she said, a small, weary smile touching her lips. I am tired of regular. They stood by the window for a long time, watching their city. You know, Arlen said, the ghost of his old, dry humor returning. This entire war, all of it, started because I petted the wrong woman. Seraphine's smile quirked. Indeed, an offense that required an apology. The long apology, he said. It has, she replied, her voice dry. Already become something of a legend in the court. The day the artisan insulted the echo and started a revolution. They are calling it the artisan's contrition. Well, Arlen said, turning to look at her in the faint light of the city. If I had known it was going to be this much trouble, I would have apologized for at least 2 more hours. I, Seraphine said, her eyes meeting his, might have made you far below them, in the Plaza of Oaths, The cleanup had begun. But the great resonance bell, the one Arlen had woken, was not being repaired. It was being enshrined. It was a new symbol. And as the trade ships began to move again, their transaction logs full of encrypted truth, the bell would ring out once every hour, not a song of harmony, but a single, stubborn, dissonant chime, a reminder, a choice. Aurelian Prime breathed. For the first time in a generation, the air in the orbital city felt truly clean. It was not just the scrubbers, now purged of the choir's subtle, mood-leveling additives. It was a change in the resonance of the place. The city had a new, foundational law, ratified by acclamation in the plaza and broadcast across the newly free network, the Charter of the Free Mind. There would be no more compulsory neural interfacing. All trade, the lifeblood of the station, would be algorithmically transparent. And in the old, decommissioned sector of the Crown Anvil, a new academy was founded, the Institute of Resonant Mechanics. Its first, and most reluctant, senior lecturer was Arlen Drake. He stood on a platform, not in a mechanic's tunic, but in a clean, respectable lecturer's coat. He looked profoundly uncomfortable. His class, a mix of human engineers, lithic Takari apprentices, and even a few curious Zell traders, watched him with rapt attention. "It is not magic," Arlen said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast, open-air workshop. He gestured to a large, disassembled freight engine. "And you cannot feel your way through it. The machine sings. Yes, but it sings a song of physics, of mathematics. You are not learning to be psychics. You are learning to listen." He ran his hand over a large, cold piston. "You listen for the sound that is wrong, the note that is out of key. The dissonance, that is where the truth is." From the back of the room, Captain Anya Cole, now director of the Freedom Forge network, nodded in approval. She was building the station's new, hardened infrastructure. Arlen was teaching the generation who would maintain it. This was the new Aurelian: co-creation, stubbornness, and listening. The old Aurelian was tried and found wanting. Emissary Morel's trial was a model of the new justice. It was broadcast on every screen. His testimony taken without psychic coercion. His crimes laid bare by the cold, hard data from the Cygnus 7 logs. The truth needles Arlen had planted were already working their way through the galactic commerce stream, and corroborating evidence poured in from a dozen other sectors that had also suffered unavoidable tragedies. Morel, stripped of his connection and his power, was a hollow, diminished thing. He was found guilty, not by Seraphine, but by the new independent tribunal. His sentence was not death. It was, as Seraphine had promised, law. He was sentenced to life in a null-field containment cell on the Takari's homeworld, a place of pure, silent stone with one single data screen. It played, on a continuous loop, the names, faces, and audio logs of the 10,000 people who died on Cygnus 7. It was the Warden's justice, writ large. The choir, from some distant, untouchable node, issued a single statement. They expressed profound disappointment in Aurelian's turn toward chaotic dissonance, and noted that such isolated systems often fail. It was not a declaration of war. It was a promise. But Aurelian was no longer afraid. It was busy. Arlen, his lecture finished, escaped the academy, and made his way to his true passion project, the Bell Workshop. It was a noisy, chaotic, wonderful space, adjacent to the Plaza of Oaths. It was here, under the shadow of the Great Resonance Bell, that the new tools were being made. Takari was there, arguing with a human engineer over the tensile strength of a new alloy. It must be strong, not elegant. A tool is a rock you throw. It is a tuning fork, you big lummox, the engineer shouted back, unafraid. If it does not resonate, it is just a paperweight. Arlen smiled. This was his true HFY. Not one man saving the day, but 100 people, of a dozen species, arguing, collaborating, and building something new. Building tools not of harmony, but of antiphony, tools to protect a mind, not to chain it. He was checking a schematic for a personal resonance shield when a shadow fell over the workbench. Your lecture, a clear, soft voice said, was adequate. You have a tendency to mumble. Arlen looked up. Iris was standing there, holding a tray with 2 cups of hot calf. She was no longer in ceremonial silks. She wore the practical, dark clothing of a station administrator. Her face, identical to Seraphine's, was now her own. It was marked by curiosity, a sharp intelligence, and a small, wry smile that was all hers. Thank you for the note, Arlen said, accepting the cup. I am not a public speaker. You are not, she agreed, sipping her own. But you are a good teacher. They were silent for a moment. The comfortable, familiar silence of friends. I came to apologize, Iris said, her gaze distant, looking at the great bell in the plaza. Arlen almost dropped his cup. You apologized to me for what? For all of it, she said, her voice quiet. For the moment you touched me, for the interrogation, for Mirel, for the revolution. She turned to him, her eyes, so like Seraphine's, holding a deep, ancient sadness. You were pulled into this because of me, because of what I am. What are you, Iris? Arlen asked, his voice gentle. I am not her sister, Iris said. Not by blood. I am a shield. That is what an echo is. A psychic anchor. A piece of the Empress's own consciousness, calved off at birth, and grown in parallel. A biological void. I was designed to bear the choir's influence for her. To be the part of her mind that harmonized, so the rest of her could stay free. I was a ritual object. A sponge for psychic poison. Arlen stared at her. The sheer, cold, aristocratic brutality of it sinking in. She split her own mind to rule. It is the burden of the kill line, Iris said, a flicker of the old, regal sadness. I existed. I was aware, but I was not me. I was just the echo. I knelt. I absorbed. I was empty. She turned her gaze fully on him. And then you, the artisan, the dissonant fool. You came in, covered in grease, and you petted me. A small, genuine laugh escaped her. You did not perform the ritual. You did not try to harmonize me. You treated me like a puppy. You touched the sacred vessel as if it were a thing, a person. Her eyes shone. It was a shock. Arlen, a note of pure, human, unritualistic chaos. You touched the node, the lock that kept me as just an anchor. You woke me up. You gave me a self. When Mirel took me, she continued, I was Iris. I was not just the echo. I was frightened. I was angry. I was me. And I knew I had to wait for you, the one who saw me. She looked down at her cup. So I am sorry for pulling you into our terrible, royal, broken family. But I am also so very grateful. Arlen was quiet. He set his cup down. He looked at this woman, this new soul, forged in ritual and freed by accident. Iris, he said, his voice rough. You have nothing to apologize for. Ever. She smiled. A true, bright smile. Good, now. My sister is waiting for you, and she hates to be kept waiting. She is getting better at it, Arlen said, a small smile of his own. Iris leaned in. Do not let her fool you. She is not. Seraphine was not in the throne room. She was in the silver chamber, the one where it had all begun. The travel throne sat in the center of the room, no longer a catastrophe, but a silent, powerful, beautiful machine. She was not in a uniform. She was in a simple, dark blue dress. Her hair was down. She was Seraphine. She apologized to me, Arlen said, walking into the room. She is dramatic, Seraphine replied, not turning. She gets it from me as well. She gets it from me. It is a lot to take in, Arlen said, standing beside her. Splitting your own soul to rule. It was the only way, Seraphine said, her voice flat. To face the choir, to hear their harmony and not be consumed by it. I gave her that burden, so I could fight. You are a terrifying woman, Your Majesty. And you, she said, finally turning to him, are the man who broke my shield and saved my soul. Both of them. She gestured to the travel throne. But Iris was only the first twist. Artisan, there is one more. For you. I am not sure I can take any more, Arlen said, rubbing the back of his neck. This one you have been running from for 10 years. She stepped to the throne and, like in the crown anvil, placed her hand on the armrest. The throne hummed to life. A low, perfect chord, but it did not project the map. It projected a lineage, a complex, branching tree of data. The deep archive did not just contain the Cygnus 7 report, Seraphine said, her voice low. It contained this, the Warden files. Arlen stepped closer. He saw names. He saw dates. He saw a genetic line. What is this? It is you, Arlen, she said. The key-bearer, a bloodline, not of kings, but of wardens. A human lineage, seeded by the first colonies. A line that was intentionally bred to be dissonant, to be immune, a failsafe against a threat like the choir. A human immune system. Your intuition, your ear for machines. It is not a gift. It is an inheritance. You are the key, the one the archive was waiting for. Arlen was silent. He stared at the name of his grandfather, his great-grandmother, a direct line of wardens. My whole life I thought I was just a mechanic. And I knew, Seraphine whispered. He froze. What? I did not know it was you, she said, turning to face him. The Empress was blushing. I knew the prophecy. I knew the archive's map required a key-bearer, a dissonant mind of the Warden line. It was my family's deepest secret, the true hope against the choir. I did not know who. I just waited. The pieces fell into place in Arlen's mind, the sheer, brilliant, terrifying improbability of it all. The pet, he said, his voice dawning. The insult. You petted the echo, Seraphine said, her voice now a mortified whisper. You walked into my throne room, the one day I had the echo present for a different test, and you insulted her. A perfect act of dissonance. I knew, she said, the instant you did it, that you might be him. Arlen's mind was reeling. The apology, the ritual of contrition, the hours. It was not a punishment, she said, her voice rising, her face flushed. You idiot. It was the only way. Mirel was right there. He would have felt you. He would have known you were dissonant. He would have killed you on the spot. She was pacing now. I had to protect you. I had to test you. What else was I supposed to do? Put a hero badge on you. The long apology was the only way I could keep you in a secure room, under my direct protection, for 4 hours, to study you, to confirm you were immune, without Mirel knowing what I was doing. She stopped, breathless, her hands clenched. I was not punishing you, Arlen, I was hiding you. In plain sight. Arlen just stared. This woman. This Empress. She had known. From that first catastrophic moment. She had not been playing catch-up. She had been playing her own game from the start. You knew, he whispered. You gambled your entire throne on a grease monkey who petted your soul. It was a good gamble, she said, her voice trembling. He crossed the room. He did not walk. He strode. He stopped in front of her. He saw the commander, the Empress, the woman, the revolutionary, the gambler. Seraphine, he said, his voice his own. Arlen, she whispered. You are exhausting, he said, and he kissed her. It was not a royal kiss. It was not elegant. It was a mechanic's kiss. It was dissonant. It was real. It tasted of calf and grief and ozone and 10 years of waiting. She kissed him back, her hands grabbing his lecturer's coat, her own choice, her own dissonance. When they finally broke apart, they were both breathless. This is highly irregular, she breathed, her forehead resting against his. Good, he whispered. I am tired of regular. They stood like that for a long time. The city hummed around them. Weeks later, the Plaza of Oaths. It was dusk. The great resonance bell was silent. Arlen and Seraphine were walking, not 3 paces apart, but side by side. The city was healing. The Freedom Forge was thriving. Iris was running the diplomatic corps. She was terrifyingly good at it. Takari had sent them a gift, a 5-ton crystal that hummed off-key. Arlen was happy. He looked at Seraphine, the light of the city catching in her dark hair. You know, he said, his old humor returning. I was just thinking, if I pet the wrong head again, I am pretty sure I will be apologizing until dawn. Seraphine stopped walking. She turned to him, a slow smile spreading across her face, a smile that was all hers. Do not be wrong again, she said, her voice a low murmur. She took a step closer. Unless, she whispered. I am there,